And then he said, they coach rugby in Pune. Why don't you go and join the academy after your board exams? We're like, rugby, sounds exciting. Let's go and see. So we go to this rugby match. And we're like, boss, this is like some carnival. And Neha and I were like, oh shit, that girl's gone. And then she gets up and she runs again and she goes to defend and then she's doing 10 other things. And we were just so excited with the game and we were so curious after it all finished.
I tell you one thing, Vahbiz, quite honestly, the way you have described your first ever experience with the sport, that I feel like playing rugby now. I honestly feel like playing rugby.
That time it was a club culture. That, if you know about a club, you join it and that's when your journey begins. There are two ways a sport can grow. One is you work at grassroots levels and one is international performance.
As a player, not being captain and being captain, what do you think has changed in you?
They're just like, Bobby, you're like one matron only. Time se aao, kana gao, waste mat karo, idhar aao, line ko touch karo. Yes.
Hi guys, and welcome back to All About Sports, the podcast, a podcast for the fans, by the fans. You guys are joined by our regular co-host, myself, Shubham Malu, and Rishabh Krishnan. And today's episode is very special because we have a very special guest with us, Vahbiz Bharucha. Vahbiz is the Indian women's rugby captain. It's an absolute honor and it's a big pleasure for us to have you on the podcast. How are you, Vahbiz? How are things with you?
Thanks, Shubham. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very good. Just wrapped up a lot of work and made it to this podcast. Thank you for having me on this.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So to all our viewers and listeners, other than the fact that Vahbiz is a top professional rugby player, she's a pro athlete, she's also a physiotherapist. So we will get into a journey. So Vahbiz, I understand like you growing up, you played a lot of different sports. I believe you played handball and shot put, and I think you were also a runner. And then finally you decided to take up rugby as a sport that you want to play long term and even represent the country. So how did this transition happen? Like take us through your childhood where you were playing so many sports, and then how did you choose rugby and how did you decide that, this is the sport I want to take forward?
So honestly, Shubham, I've said this many, many times that, I never chose the sports that I played. They chose me to be a part of them. Right from, like you mentioned, handball, shot put, running, etc. I had great guidance in my school, my PT teacher. I think that's where it all started for me.
Which school did you go to?
I went to the Astute school.
Okay.
The co-ed school, in Pune. And he identified from a very young age that I had this sporting, career ahead of me. And he really, really guided me and molded me into it. His name is Sanjay Kamble. He first put me into athletics because that's just the base for every sports person. So the running and, all those athletic drills are just, basic. That's your foundation. So that's when 100 meters and shot put happened. And slowly, handball happened actually very, very, very out of the blue and very organically. I was waiting for athletics practice to happen. And I didn't know, but the practice got cancelled. And I was sitting around wasting time, still that inner fire was not there. Ki chalo, kuch to kare khud ka. Still a teenager. So watching the senior handball team play, they had their practice happening on a Sunday. And incidentally, they needed a goalkeeper because everyone were in the offense and nobody else was keeping because nobody likes to do the keeping. It's the dirty job. So my handball coach was standing there and he said, Baba, kya kar rahi hai? And I was playing around with the sand, wasting time. And I said, kuch nahi. So he said, come, be goalkeeper. I said, okay. So I went and I said, what do I have to do? He said, no ball should go in this goal. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, no problem. I always knew like handball existed, but, never knew it as like a sport to be played, And that game went really well and I was performing very, very well. Out of 5-6 goals, only 2 balls of 1 ball went through and he was just taken aback. He said, where were you all this time? And I was like, I was right here.
Playing with the sand.
Playing with the sand. So that's when he spoke to Sanjay sir and he said that, nothing doing. She's coming into handball. And same school. So, I mean, within the school, only teams just kept changing. It didn't change that I had to still turn up for athletics heats and so on. But handball then became the focus. And I played that for 3 years, through the last 3 years of my schooling. One rainy day, preparation for the 10th standard board exam and all of that. So we were in school and our principal told us that all you sports people, we sports band, you all are just going to study. So that last half an hour of school that we had, which was called a zero period, we had to spend in studying. Kuch nahi ho raha tha, but we were not allowed to be on the ground for sure. And Sanjay sir sent somebody to call me and my now teammate Neha Pardeshi. She's also the vice captain. She's the former vice captain of the Indian women's rugby team. She and I were schoolmates. So he sent somebody to call both of us. Now, when Sir called both of us, it was either a very good news or we were going to get slapped. It went either way. So Neha and I were like, heartbeats are racing. And we go down and we see these two tall, big shouldered, huge chested men standing over there. And Sanjay sir introduced us to them. One was Sandeep Singh and one was Mr. Sarut Khare. And he said, you know what, Vahbiz, Neha, this is Sandeep Singh used to be called Hammer. So this is Hammer and this is Mr. Surut. So we said, hello, sir. And then he said, they coach rugby in Pune. Why don't you go and join the academy after your board exams? So Neha and I looked at each other. Neha is a little timidly built. So both of us looked at each other like, all of 15-year-old we both were. And like, rugby, sounds exciting. Let's go and see. So Surut sir called us over and he said that in the coming few weekends, we're having a game happening in the outskirts of Pune. Why don't you come and watch? So Neha and I, anything to skip studies. So both of us, bina license ke gaadi pe gaye. We went somewhere far away on a ground. And it's just, we both have been involved in sports from a very long time before this incident. And, I mean, since you all also have been involved with sport, you all would understand that a lot of the school games happen in a very pathetic way, like, आओ खेलो पानी नहीं कुछ नहीं ऐसे like poor children, all of us are stranded around and we made to play like games after games after games. And the energy is only, I mean, though everybody is so high on energy, the energy is done like that, So we go to this rugby match and there was just, everybody was smiling, music was playing, snacks were put out. And we're like, boss, this is like some carnival. We go inside, and then we see Surut sir over there and he's like, oh, I'm so glad you all made it. And And then we went and we sat and we watched the game. And that time, I mean, so talking about 2008, when women's rugby, when the rugby sport chhod, I mean, nobody believed or knew that rugby existed even for men. But even when you say that men are playing rugby, someone will say, yeah, rough and tough sport. But women were playing rugby and they were playing the 15s format of rugby. I mean, we understand that value today because back in the day, it was just the Pune team that had that amount of players that would be able to form a 15s team. And they were playing and, they were going like at each other, at the legs and just tackling and going down. And Neha and I were like, oh shit, that girl's gone. And then she gets up and she runs again and she goes to defend and then she's doing 10 other things. And we were just so excited with the game and we were so curious after it all finished that both of us went up to Surut and we just like, what is this, So finished our 10th standard, finished the boards and all of that nonsense. And then the moment our board exams finished, I still remember we finished on the 20th of March of 2009 and 21st, we were there at the field, so there was just so much of enthusiasm and so much of curiosity that just got us to the game and we just stuck on because it is such a lovely game. Both of us have our own reasons, but for me, it was just the rules of the game that really attracted me a lot.
I tell you one thing, Vahbiz, quite honestly, the way you have described your first ever experience with the sport, It was such a like passionate and animated description that I feel like playing rugby now. I honestly feel like playing rugby. but it's something that you touched upon, which I think is a great point. Is like when you're in school now, school is the time when you start picking up on different sports. You hopefully get that exposure where you learn different sports. So like Rishabh and I, we went to St. Mary's, a school in Mumbai, and St. Mary's is popular for sports. We have a lot of sports out here, largely cricket, basketball, football. But in Mumbai, like even a school like Mary's, which is famous for sports, we didn't have something like rugby. My first introduction to rugby was at Bombay Gymkhana, where I used to go to play football and I used to see people play rugby. So like for kids growing up, like you're from Pune, so maybe you can give us your experience from Pune, or because you've traveled so much. For kids growing up, when it comes to rugby, like what's the way into rugby? Is there a good school system where there are inter-school tournaments and there are a lot of schools playing rugby, or is it clubs? Like how do kids get into the sport?
I'm talking from 2009 because that's when I joined the sport. But that time it was largely club. It was a club culture that, if you know about a club, you join it, and that's when your journey begins. And then, a national tournament is organized, and then you get an exposure to play, or invitational tournaments, and you get an exposure to play. But now the scene has changed so much in the past 12 years that now the schools are playing rugby. Rugby has been involved in the School Games Federation of India. So a lot of schools find it beneficial to pick up a new sport because the kids can move fast ahead within that, how do you say it? The journey upward. So a lot of kids get attracted, like, they're not doing well in football, but they're fast. So they come into rugby and they are much better players at rugby. And then, suddenly they find themselves playing for the Maharashtra team, or suddenly they find themselves playing for the Pune district team, which in a game like football, or, let's just say a 100-meter race, you're in a bigger crowd and you're just one speck in all of that. Whereas when they start playing rugby, they've already started much above many people. So that is what attracted a lot of kids to play the sport in the first place. And the fact that it is a part of the SGFI, they get benefits. Like if they perform well, they get whatever marks in school, they get preference in terms of their admissions in schools.
So is it like a sports quota kind of a thing?
It's not a sports quota. It is an affiliation. So the state has an affiliate, like at least speaking of Maharashtra state, the Rugby Association of Maharashtra has an affiliation to the School Games Federation. So when they're affiliated, all schools in Maharashtra now, when they play rugby, they can have an inter-school tournament. Then, the best school represents the district. Then the best district teams are put together. The best players are formed to make a national team. And then that's how you climb up the ladder in that form. And you make it to the top, and then you get benefits in terms of marks for students. I mean, that's what matters to them, right? Yeah. And also then prestige and honor, and these things just come, these are the non-quantifiable things. And then, a kid gets attracted to that kind of success. So this is how now people can join rugby. Now, what happens when so now a child can, so also rugby is involved in the All India University Games. So the kid can play rugby from age 14, they can get into it and play all the way till age 24, if I'm correct, till the university games, and then they can play Khelo India University Games. So 14 to 24 is 10 very, very important years for them. And they can do it while they're in the schooling system. And then after that, if they still wish to continue, they can join the club. Or they can already join the club while they are in school.
Yeah, so it seems like now rugby is well integrated in the system. You can start from school and go all the way up. So that's great for the sport, because considering how you started to where it is progressed now, I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And also the thing is that I lost my thought, but the fact that a child can play from 14 to 24 while being in a system, not worrying about any extra thing to worry about. like, oh, okay, school's done, now I have to go for rugby. It's not like that. It's within school I am playing rugby.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing. Yeah.
It's almost a reminder of sort of a US sports system, right? Where you play in college,
Absolutely.
you continue to play in college kind of thing. So it's within a broader
Absolutely.
system, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And within the colleges also, they have this, if you're a good player, because after school, you can choose which college you want to go to. Colleges scout for talent. And they say that, we're going to try and form the best rugby team from players across the state and give them scholarships, sports scholarships. So that's like the give and take of it.
That's really so. Vavi, just for curiosity of our viewers and other, others who are interested in rugby, what are some of the big colleges in India for playing rugby who kind of hand out scholarships? What are some of the big colleges?
Oh, wow, I wouldn't know it on the top of my head, but there's Chandigarh University in Chandi. If it's in Delhi, I'm not sure. But there's Chandigarh University, there's Delhi University, there is in Maharashtra there is Shivaji University. It's in Bombay, I believe. And so these are the main ones I know of.
Okay.
So these and which is that other one? Guru Nanak Dev University. Guru Nanak Dev University is huge for sport in general. So any kid looking at gaining a sports scholarship and doing their studies alongside, just without any doubt, just contact Guru Nanak Dev University.
No, that's really, really helpful, Vahbiz. And Vahbiz, in general, a lot of the parts of the story you said, like Shubham said, is really brings a lot of nostalgia. I'm sure we all, when we were in school, sort of dreamed about, my best friend on my team, we'll grow up and be captain and vice captain together. That's just an absolute dream situation. But I think with that, we obviously know getting to the level that you're at, it would have taken a fair bit of challenges. It's pretty challenging as it is to get into athletics in India. To make it to the very top and to be captain, I'm sure is, a whole nother level. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about one of your experiences somewhat recently when you got dropped from the squad in 2016, 17. 2016. Some of the learnings that you had from that time away from the squad and kind of how that's been instrumental in not just your return, but then sort of your rise to captaincy as well. So what are the biggest things you took away from that sort of time away, maybe?
One of the most important things, Rishabh, I took from that was that no matter how big a player, no matter what your history may be, if you are not fit or in shape at that given point of time, man, there's many to replace you. And it doesn't matter whether they're not the same shape, size, and character. You just move. It's flowing. You're never ever invincible. There will always be a time when, if you, like I said, very simply put, if you snooze, you lose. And that's exactly what happened. Where I took it too easy. And very honestly, I also thought that, what, I'm captain. If my fitness is upar niche thoda sa, chala lenge. But when you're looking at that kind of performance, there is no chalta. There is just, you be the best or you don't do it. But don't put anybody in a compromise. And that's one of the biggest learnings I took out of it. So everything then just rotated around that. And then I had to choose. At that given point of time, I had a choice whether to then respectfully or disrespectfully exit or just come back and, prove myself. And prove myself not to anybody, but to myself of who I am and what I am capable of. So that was it. Just pulled my socks up. I did whatever I had to do to get back in line. And that's just something that drove me continuously. That's it. And, honestly, the captaincy part was never on my mind because it's something that comes and goes. So if my time went, it went. So it's always the most capable person that is handed over that responsibility. And I just wanted to be able to play this happened in 16. And I just wanted to be able to play till, I'm like 38, 40, something like that. So that was just the goal in my mind. And alongside whatever benefits came, it was bonus. He's on mute.
Mazhar, you're on mute. Rishabh, you're on mute, I guess.
Sorry about that. I think this is this is pretty much every call we have. At least one of us does this. No, but that's a really good point, Vahbiz, and it's sometimes a really good message for everyone across careers to not take things for granted. I think when things are coasting, it's easy to sometimes take things for granted. I also kind of wanted to again go off another question that that Shubham had earlier, which was talking about the growth of rugby in countries like India. When you look at countries that are pretty big, both from the men's side as well as the women's side, you talk about countries like England, you talk about countries like New Zealand, France, countries where rugby is pretty well integrated into the sporting culture, right? It's those are countries that historically have played rugby for quite some time. I guess what are some of the ways that India can sort of inculcate this into their culture? I think it's growing a little bit. Like, for example, a lot of I did know a few classmates who played rugby at the club level in school that I think my parents wouldn't have known too many people. So it's growing. Right. But what are some of the other ways that maybe the sport is looking to grow, could grow in a country where, let's be honest, a lot of the sporting limelight goes to cricket.
Is on
pretty much.
Cricket,
yeah.
So I tell a lot of people this, Rishabh, that what we need to learn from this is we need to take the workable variables that happened with cricket. Now, if you trace cricket's history, it didn't start off too well, and nobody really, going back in the day when cricket came into India, nobody really wanted to play it. They wanted to boycott it. It grew from there. Okay, it grew from there to having, let's just say 83 now that it's all out there, the World Cup, and even that team for that matter. It was an underdog team. They had to really bring themselves up till there. And then that was a marker. And then everybody was like, you know what, we want to be like that. And anybody can be like that because they were all men next door. They were somebody's neighbor, they were someone's father, they were someone's son. And that grew from that to the next, to the next, to the next. And now cricket has become the whole thing that we see. So every sport in the country needs to learn from that journey that it's not happened overnight. They've not just got all the funds. They've not just got all the, glam and every glitter and all. The history of every player has put some of the other end to bringing the sport here. So I think with rugby, similarly, there are two ways a sport can grow. One is you work at grassroots levels, and one is international performance, your national team performance. So these two have to work in a lot of balance. So you can't just have the national team performing, but nobody playing rugby. And then you'll just have an exhaustion of players. Because at one point of time, it will just, a player has a career. It's what, 10, 12 years, peak career. And then they go off. Then you have to scout for talent again, which is it's a real Herculean task. So that's what would happen in the past where, we had a national team and it would perform. Senior players would leave, and then oh God, we don't have more players. So look for players from here and there, invite them, develop them, Okay, now we have another senior team. Okay, now they've also left. Now what? And then they just kept repeating for year after year until we got, every sport needs money, it needs sponsorships. So we, in 2016, were very fortunate to have this French bank, Societe Generale, to fund the entire grassroots program that spread rugby across the nation. It has to go through the entire landscape. So they had a thing where it was all about the grassroots that every kid has to touch the ball. So them along with the World Rugby's program of Get Into Rugby, they had a program called Get Into Rugby. So these two programs together was the whole point of Get Into Rugby was, you should know how to what the ball feels like and how to throw the ball and a few rules about the game. So these two put together were run for 3 years up until the World Cup in 2019 in Japan. Yeah. So in Japan, the World Cup happened, the men's World Cup. So 16 to 19, an entire grassroots level program was run by Rugby India, by World Rugby, and with the help of Societe Generale. So I forgot the figures, but India ranked number 1 in Asia in terms of its outreach. Yeah. So that was a big boost. And we have a national team that is performing. Now these kids will grow up, and as these seniors get more senior, they will leave and the new blood will come in. Initially, it was a little difficult because the seniors were leaving faster than the new blood coming in. So it was a little bit of an up down. But now that gap has gone lesser and lesser. And in fact, our under 18 team, speaking of this year in October, they stood second in the Asian Championship held for them in Uzbekistan. So that's the level that the grassroots now has reached. So now these under 18 girls will directly transition into the seniors. And then another set of under 18 will come. And then, so it's that whole thing. So the kid starts from playing in school, moves into university or club, plays for the country in the under 18, builds up in that ladder, and then moves into the seniors. And then, so that's their journey. That's how their pathway is built. And honestly, like I said, for any sport to grow, it's national level performance and grassroots.
So basically what you said, for any sport to grow, there has to be national or international level performance and grassroots. In fact, this is something that we had discussed also in the podcast in one of our previous episodes. There's also one more thing which I think is required is at the international or national level, it's also important to decorate and at the same time celebrate some of your key athletes or key performers, because these guys, they become icons for the youth to look up to. And then that keeps a healthy chain of new breed coming into the sport.
But Shubham, that can only happen when you have that international performance backing you. Otherwise, it becomes like, not to take names, but there are many players we know who have been ashamed at the international level. And not many people want to be like them. So even though they have reached that level, they've not really made a mark. And any athlete does not want to go that path. Even though it seems lucrative temporarily, they don't want to go that path. So it has to be a very solid backing to, be able to even celebrate your national level players.
Oh, of course. And like in the conversation with Rishabh, one thing you mentioned, which really shows a lot about your character and your grit, is when you were not a part of the team anymore. You could have like walked away, but you decided to choose the other way, grind it out and come back in the team. So one thing I want to know from you is there was a time when you weren't captain and you are captain. So as a player, not being captain and being captain, what do you think has changed in you? Because once you become captain, I'm sure you're also a senior member of the team. You have youngsters coming through. You're perhaps mentoring them. So how do you think as a player, your mentality has changed after becoming captain?
One of the things two things have happened after becoming captain. One is I have taking responsibility. Okay, is one thing, and I can't shirk any responsibility. I can't say that it's your job to do it. It is I have to inculcate the value that it is our job. It's not my job alone. It's not your job to do. It's our job. So that responsibility to be able to communicate that with the players. And the second thing that I have learned through the way is to practice what you preach. Yeah, Mike went. is to practice what you preach. You have to do what you say. You can't say that, like for instance, I can't tell my teammates that, run straight when I am running zigzag. If I do what I say, people observe and they're like, boss, we need to do it that way. So walk the talk and taking responsibility. These are the two things that changed in me as a captain.
I remember when the Last Dance documentary had come out of Michael Jordan.
I was going to say the exact same thing, but go for it. Exact same thing.
I remember he said something like, I was very hard on my fellow teammates and stuff like that, but I never asked them to do anything that I did not do it myself. So I guess that very well explains your ideology of walking the talk and being an example for others to look up to.
But Vahbiz, you seem a lot nicer than Michael Jordan. You seem way nicer than Michael Jordan by far.
Yeah, I do have some hair, yes. Thanks, yeah. No,
honestly,
I mean, if you take my teammates to the side and you ask them, "Ekdam sumdi mein that is she really nice?" I think they might say otherwise.
No, that's the follow up after this, Vahbiz. That's the follow up.
Yeah. Okay.
but like, so one thing which we've understood is now rugby is well integrated into the schooling system. There are lot more players coming into the system. The grassroots over the last 3 years through the program has developed well. So like today we have an IPL or we have a Kabaddi league and stuff like that. Do you think as of today there are enough players, young players in the sport where perhaps rugby could also have a league like that?
Yes, there are. So there are players, but realistically speaking, it's not at the level that a person would want to switch on the TV and get hooked onto.
Okay.
It's not reached that, that level of game, that skillful level of game that, one would want to watch that, though the scrappiness has also become very organized in the last few years. A few weeks ago when we were at the Nationals, where all the new teams are playing good rugby. There is, loss of, there's lack of skill and there's lack of knowledge, but the level is increased quite a bit. However, there is a talk in the pipeline where, so rugby is in 2 formats, 7s and 15s. So the 7s format is more like your T20 format, where it's a shorter game and it's 15 minutes, and your 15 aside is a 80-minute game, and you have 15 players playing in the team. So the 7 minutes, so the 7-a-side game is involved in your Olympics, Commonwealth, Asian Games, all those rung of games. And the 15s has a World Cup. At least in India, they recognize 7s as a sport to get into because it's fast, it's quick, it's easy to understand. It's in the SGFI, it's in the All India Games, it's in the Khelo India Youth Games. So it's being recognized, but 15s is still more a club level tournament in India. So basically they want to make 15s the league format wherein, teams can make it a fancy thing, because at the 15s level, the top 8 teams that are there in India, men and women both, have very good level of rugby. So they want to promote the 15s into more of this league format. But again, things are still in communication. Nothing has come through. It's still a plan in the pipeline, and but it is being spoken about. Yes.
That makes sense. And having a format, I think a lot of sports have kind of looked for formats that draw eyeballs, basically. Vahbiz, I don't want to ask you. You obviously have, from a family perspective, a huge background in sports, right? Your family has kind of a background in boxing, MMA, hockey, so pretty broad wrestling as well.
Yeah.
So very broad sporting background. So I'm assuming there was a pretty high encouragement of kind of growing up in sports, going into sports. I did want to ask you, one, obviously what that experience was like growing up in a sporting household, but two, were there ever times where you questioned going into rugby? Were there ever times where you kind of doubted yourself, where you said maybe a different sport, maybe something else, and kind of how you got over that? Because I'm sure a lot of athletes go through the same thought process.
I've never seen any of my family members play the sport, any of these sports competitively. I just know about it through stories and, chatting. Growing up in a household, though, it was very, very supportive. Everyone from brothers to parents to, everybody, uncles, aunts, everyone was very, very supportive, very, very encouraging. Har ke bhi aaye to bhi, there's always like a shabashi, don't worry, you'll do better next time. This is a part and parcel of it. So it was always a talk through these things. What was your second question?
No, the second, I just want to ask Vahbiz, were there ever times where you questioned going into rugby? Where you
question, yes.
Yeah.
So I had a stint in my school where I had got into wrestling, and one of my teachers was very, very, very adamant that I try wrestling and I get into it, because she thought that I really had a bright future in front of me, just looking at my body type and my understanding of sport and my movements and so on. So she said that you have to play wrestling, leave handball, or play handball, but wrestling is your thing now. So I was a little, maybe not. I said, I'll give it a shot. I've never not tried any sport. So I gave wrestling a shot, and I honestly, it was a very interesting game, but I just did not like the soloness in the game. That's when I realized, that I love playing with a team, and that really gets me kicked. That we did this together. We did this together. Our plan worked. As opposed to like win about in 3 whatever minutes, and you're just like, who to celebrate with? Oh yeah, coach, and what else? Is this just all my doing? And that whole feeling, I didn't quite like it. Also, I didn't quite like the at that given point of time. I didn't quite like the physicality of the game. So I always knew that I'm well built and I'm strong, and all these genetic blessings that I've been endowed with. And I always knew that somewhere in the back of my mind, I always knew that I was bigger or stronger than the opponent. Maybe I didn't always have a chance at winning, but just in these two arenas, and I didn't want to hurt the opponent. So that whole idea of walking over someone and winning something didn't settle very well with me. So wrestling is all about that. You just put someone down and you're sitting on top of them. You have them on their back, and whenever the referee says you've won, and I just feel sometimes when I win, I feel so bad that I'm really sorry. I hope I didn't hurt you. And my coach would just be like, "What is wrong with you? That's the whole point of the game." And just didn't settle well with me. So when rugby happened, that was my whole thing, that boss, जो मैंने छोड़ा वही मेरे पीछे पीछे आ गया वापस. And now it's like, but this time it's with a team, and it's on a full-fledged field. It's not in one circle. So rugby is played on the same dimensions as a football field. So those two things got me, interested in the game. When I watched the game, obviously I was very interested. But it was the same thing of basically putting your opposition down with your strength and your power. So when I came home, when Surutsa met us, I missed that part of the story. But when Surutsa met us and he told us about rugby and so on in school, I came home and I stood in front of my parents. They were watching TV. So my father is sitting having his chakna, and mom's there sitting watching the TV and news. And I say, Mom, Dad, I have something to say. So they're like, yeah, sure, what happened? It was like that scene where, I'm going to tell them that I failed in some subject, but it was something absolutely different. So it was, you can imagine the scene now, it's in front of you. So I'm standing there, hands behind my back. And I'm like, so this coach came to school. His name is Surod Khare, and he runs a rugby club in Pune. So my father was like, okay. So I said, so he's asked to join this, the sport, and it looks interesting, but I'm not sure, Daddy, if I want to do this, because I don't really don't want to hurt somebody. So he looks at me like that. He says, can you stop talking like a girl and go and play whenever he's called you? And I was just like, okay, this is just like green signal. So it's just, I had to hear it from someone. And that's how that barrier got broken over.
No, that's a great, and Vahbiz, you've hit on two very big points, I think, because one of the big, I think that's so great to hear that you got that, massive green light from him, because I think the two biggest sometimes constraints about, in India, I'm sure a lot of countries, kids getting into sports is one, parents, and two, the thing that you talked about earlier, which is academics. So some kind of academic encouragement, academic incentive is really helpful, and you kind of hit both those bullets and how they're kind of big both for you, but also for growing the sport.
Absolutely. And I honestly believe that every person's career, whoever is, wherever in their life, I think it begins at that very age of, that 10 to 14. If you capture somebody within that age group and you're able to inculcate what they are best at within that age, and I'm not saying it has to come from school, but just because schooling is such a majority of the structure, I mean, everybody gets into the schooling structure. Most people get into the schooling structure. I think it's very vital for the teachers to be able to identify kids and their talent, and really bombard them with that appropriate information at that given point of time. Because if you lose that gap, then it's too late. It's too late.
No, of course, it's important to catch them young, catch them at the right time. And in fact, interestingly, like Rishabh said right now, I don't know why I'm continuously saying Mazhar. So Mazhar is another
You can call
co-host
him
of
Maz,
ours.
it's okay.
I figured because I'm not mother.
Yeah, that's all. Process of elimination, we kind of figured it out.
Yeah. So like Rishabh mentioned, parents play a very important part, especially like for these kids, to encourage them in sports. At the same time, not for them to like just be pressurized about academics, but then to give them the leeway to like, guys, go try some sports, see if you're good at it. Also, another thing is, at least in a country like India, there's this mentality that अरे तू sports खेलेगा तो पैसा क्या कमाएगा, what's the career, and so on and so forth. And I came across some interviews of yours. There was this one interview in 2019 where you basically said that in rugby, I think there's no remuneration, there isn't too much match fee. And in one of your, I believe, TEDx talks, you happen to mention something like, even though there isn't too much money, it is a lot of players, they have grown a lot by just being a part of the sport. They have not gone to their distant village, but they've gone international and they've experienced and they've got that exposure. So what I want to know from you is, there are basically two questions. First question, is there money now in the sport as compared to 2019? And secondly, even if there isn't that much money, you play with a lot of athletes, you've seen a lot of athletes, people who come from perhaps not that much of a privileged background. What do you think has changed in them as a person after getting to the sport and the exposure the sport has given them?
So to answer your first question, because it's just very straightforward, yes, rugby now is remunerating the national level players, both the junior team and the senior team. So the sponsors that have come on board is the very obvious Odisha government. They have taken the responsibility, or they've taken interest in sponsoring the athletes, the national level athletes. Apart from that, we have partners like Fast and Up, who are nutrition partners now for the sport. So, I mean, a sport like rugby, you would assume, you would know that needs a lot of, demands a lot of the body. So, hence Fast and Up is there. And the Kalinga Institutes in Odisha. So, I don't know if you've heard of them, but Kalinga Institute of Information Technology, they are sponsoring the entire lodging and boarding. So they have like how many ever you want hostels there in Bhubaneswar, and we are put up over there free of cost. At just we don't pay a single penny. So the food we're eating like professional athletes. We're living comfortably. It's not like we carry our sleeping bag and roll it around at the station. So we're living comfortably. The women's team now, the union is getting more sensitive because women have certain problems that cannot be discussed with male individuals. So they're making sure that there is a person, a female, who the ladies can talk to, wherever they come from, whoever they are. They have that person to communicate with. So they don't have to go to a big burly South African coach and say that, coach, I'm missing my mom. He'll just say, shut up, run 200 meters, Well, not really, but he would not know what to do with that information. So yes, the sport has got money now. And Odisha government has signed a contract for 3 years. So for the next 3 years, at least, there will be this relationship between the sponsors and us. And obviously, Societe Generale remains a constant sponsor even now. Regarding the other question that you asked, and about the players who have been playing up until now without any quantifiable return from the sport, like I said in the talk, Shubham, you cannot quantify respect. You cannot quantify empowerment. You cannot quantify courage. You cannot quantify these things. And this is all that these girls have gained, women, if I may say, have gained from the sport of rugby. Because, when they see themselves and when they find themselves winning a competition on field, it gives them a lot of encouragement to continue to do that, because you're clearly good at it. So why not? And if not, then is the other side as lucrative in terms of personality development as this? Or are you just going to keep me closed in four walls and, maintain my self-respect and integrity? Whereas I can create that for myself. So this kind of a thought process has taken place amongst many, many girls, not only who've played for the national team, but also who have been a part of the game while it was growing and not made it to the national team. So a lot of people who you find saying that, yeah, I did play rugby for a couple of years and, it gave me a lot of excitement and, I was able to conquer so many things in my life at that given point of time. I don't play it anymore, but, I do it recreationally. So that's what the game has done for a lot of girls. And, if I can give you examples, our union works at creating a player pathway. So for instance, me, okay, I have a physiotherapy degree. So they have pulled me into becoming a medical educator to teach first aid and intensive care for rugby within the union. So I am now certified as a World Rugby medical educator, which for a layman, just that those words put together might sound very fancy, but to a person who's actually in the field will be like, oh, you're certified by the World Rugby. Not bad, you have some credit to you. So now there's no money exchange in this, but automatically I get opportunities and doors open in front of me that, okay, this, yeah, of course, this person is completely reliable. They play rugby, so they've already got their ethics sorted. And now they're also a World Rugby certified educator. Similarly, some of the girls have been taken into becoming referees. Some girls have been taken into becoming management positions. So everyone has been given a responsibility, and they have created that pathway for them beyond being a national level athlete. So as much as we would not be getting paid, or we had no remuneration, again, quantifiable, it's very difficult to even count on the fingers how much we've earned out of the game.
No, absolutely. I tell you, like Rishabh played a lot of basketball. I played a lot of tennis and football. We never became professionals at it, but obviously money is important. It is good to earn money out of the sport, and it's important for a daily livelihood. But sport teaches you so much that it can literally make a person who has zero confidence, is super insecure, anxious, into a totally different version by just playing a sport. It increases your focus. Absolutely. It makes your personality. So it's very nice to see. And one great thing that I think I have taken away from this conversation with you is the fact it's so nice to see that the government is taking interest in the sport. They're promoting the sport. They're helping the athletes. Because otherwise it's impossible for a sport to grow, and a sport like rugby is getting that sort of backing. I think it's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. But Rishabh and Shubham, I also want to put in this thing in bold, italics, and underline, and in inverted commas, that every athlete should complete their education. They must do it, because honestly, with personal experience, at the end of the day, that is what takes you on beyond your sport. Yes, people see that, you've been an athlete. Yes, people see all of these things. But if you have your degree behind you, it can be, it can be anything. I would not say as simple as this and as complex as that, but it can be anything. Complete your education, at least up until a bachelor's degree. What will that do is it will keep your brains functioning, and you're not just working in a one-track way of kill. You have things that are getting your mind ticking in different ways, which will help you in the game. So you're not becoming this one-directional blinkers on your eyes, aimless. Not aimless, but opinionless. You cannot see anything else. The moment you know that, okay, now just let's say, for example, if I do a bachelor in science, I'm thinking of the anatomy, and I'm thinking about biology, and I'm thinking about plants, and the thing, and also I'm trying to form structures in my brain about sport or whatever I'm playing, and it is helping me be more refreshed to do that, create that structure, because I'm not only thinking about the structure. I'm taking a break from it, and I'm thinking about something absolutely vivid. So at the end of the day, inshallah, people have a sporting career of years to come, and they gain a lot out of it. But that will come to an end when your body gives up, and then it's your mind. And yes, you can always take up education later on, but you really need a lot of drive to get back to education at like after your entire sporting journey. So it's better to get it done when you're young and when you're at it anyway, and continue the sport side by side. So I would really encourage every child, every parent, everybody, get the children to finish their at least a degree. They should have a degree in hand.
Those are very important words of advice. I think Rishabh has something to say.
No,
Unmute yourself.
I did it. This time I was successful. Well, 1 out of every 10 times I do it right. Vahbiz, I was going to ask you just quickly from, I think, a couple of things you said over the call. So where is, we see across sports, there are sometimes pockets of India where sports is, very popular, right? For like football, we'd say, Goa, West Bengal, Haryana very specifically is really good at wrestling, boxing. Are there specific parts, it's sounding like maybe Orissa, Maharashtra, Punjab, what are the parts of India where, rugby is really, really popular?
So rugby is very popular in Delhi, Haryana, Maharashtra, Orissa, and West Bengal. So these are the main states that have rugby happening very actively. Bihar is an upcoming state in terms of rugby development. And one of Asia's fastest runners is sitting in Bihar.
Oh, nice.
And she's on the Indian team. Her name is Sweetie Kumari, and she's again nothing to beat her speed. But put her on an athletics track, probably she'd be one of the slow ones. Put her into rugby, and she's, it's one of those great examples of that.
Like how you said initially at the start of the conversation, you sometimes just like get picked up and be put in another spot. Like for you in handball, and you were just fantastic at it. So it's just having the right coach and you being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And absolutely. So Vahbiz, with this, like we've had a very engaging conversation with you, and we would like to end it on a light note. So we'll have a fun rapid fire round with you, just like a few quick questions and quick answers. Like whatever comes to your head, you have to just go for it. Okay.
Done.
Okay. So to start off with, what is your favorite drink?
Minute Maid Pulpy Orange.
Got it.
Vahbiz, I don't know if you've had multiple jersey numbers, but do you have any favorites of any if you've had different numbers?
So I've fluctuated between a 1, an 8, and a 12. And by far, I just think a 12 feels very nice on me. I like the 12 number. But in rugby, we have, in rugby 15s, every jersey has is designated to a position. So in the 15s format, I wear a number 8. But just heart is with number 12.
Completely fair, Vahbiz. Next one, advice you would give to your younger self.
Advice I would give to my younger self. Every day counts. Don't waste it. Every day counts.
I needed to tell myself this yesterday, Vahbiz. I had a very unproductive day yesterday. I should have told myself that yesterday.
Fair enough. So now next question for you, Vahbiz, is one thing you'd like to change about yourself, if there is anything.
Yes, I wish I had control over it. One is cravings, like food cravings. it just gets the better of me. And the second is I'm still working on it a lot, but complacency.
Okay, got it. So during a conversation, you said your teammates might say something else, Sumri mein. So how do your teammates best describe you?
So Neha calls me a matron. She says, so everyone calls me Bobby. And they're just like, Bobby, you're like one matron only. And say, "Aao, kana gao, waste mat karo, idhar aao, line ko touch karo." So she's tagged me as a matron. But all the girls have a little bit of fear when it comes to me. I don't know what they describe me as, but matron has remained.
Fair enough. So Vahbiz, your next question is, what's your favorite place in the world?
So I have been to a couple, and honestly, I went to Paris in 2019, and I really want to go back there. it's not my favorite place, but it's caught an eye. So I want to go back there. However, I have been very, very, very impressed with Sri Lanka. So these two places.
I totally agree with you on Paris. When I went there, I was there for just 2 days, but 2 days doesn't do justice to the city. I would love to go back.
I was there for one.
What a place.
I beat you to it.
No, but definitely that place is just simply amazing. Now, the next question is the best international playing experience you've ever had.
So my best international playing experience I've had was again in 2019 in Jakarta. We were there for the Asia Rugby Trophy Championship, and I was wearing number 12. And that experience was great because there was very recently we had a team of coaches that was focusing towards our performance internationally, and that was their second year with us. And having been into the second year, they already knew the players' strengths and weaknesses. So how we were going about with that tournament was just very, very eye-opening for me, and also very interesting. The whole experience. Though we stood second there and we were aimed to come first. Even despite that, I think that will be right now my favorite tournament.
Vahbiz, going off that, who has been your toughest opponent so far?
Oh, toughest in terms of body, Kazakhstan, hands down. Toughest in terms of just agility and teamwork, Japan.
Fair. I was going to say, in terms of in Asia, at least Kazakhstan and Japan seem to be the two kind of big stalwarts in the in the game.
Yeah. So Japan's number 1, China's number 2, and Kazakh number 3.
Got it. Completely makes sense. And then maybe you spoke to this already, Vahbiz, but your most memorable game so far?
My most memorable game. So in 2019, we played our second test of Rugby 15s in Philippines. And we were 3 countries, so Singapore, Philippines, and India. And flashback in 2018, the same tournament, we lost miserably to them. But in 2019, we gave Philippines a very, very tough fight. I mean, that game could have just gone anywhere. However, we beat Singapore, and that was just a very, very memorable moment.
Nice, got it. And now, as we come to the end of the rapid fire, there's a segment in which you have to either select this or that, okay? So the first question to you is, if you had a superpower, would you like to be able to fly, or would you wish for super strength?
Super strength.
Then travel to the past or travel to the future?
Travel to the past, because then I can still go through the present.
Good point. Actually, no one says that in this question. I've never heard anyone say that. It's a good point.
And I tell you what, I love the way Rishabh changed his tone while asking the question.
This is also my audition for some kind of TV show in the future. This is
Okay.
And the last question, fried food or fresh food?
Fresh food that's fried.
Well played. Well played.
That is a great answer to the end of the interview. No, but honestly, Vahbiz, talking to you was absolutely amazing. Your journey that you've shared, the stories that you've shared, the way the sport is progressing in the country, and your contribution being the captain, it's just immense. And yeah, thank you so much for being a part of this interview. It was so cool to talk to you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I mean, I've honestly given a lot of interviews and been on a lot of podcasts, but your rapid fire really did it for me. It was just amazing. It was too cool. Thank you. And even your questions and everything, it was lovely. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vahbiz. Thank you. And that's rapid fire. All the credit goes to Malu. This was all his idea.
No, it's always most athletes love to have that one thing that keeps them ticking, and I think rapid fire is just the way to do it.
Absolutely. So to all our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. This is Vahbiz Bharucha. We'll put her Instagram handle in the description below. Please follow her. Please support Indian rugby, and do like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week again.
If you like this episode, make sure to leave a like and share it with anyone else who might be interested. You can also subscribe on any social media platform that you prefer, and all our links are in the bio. We also have a website with all our episodes as well as blogs and a whole lot of other sports content, so make sure to check that out as well.